No, I might need it farther up.
No, it's not on.
Oh, it's not on. Try again.
Is it on?
No.
Blowing it.
Okay, now it's on.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Killing killers because killing is wrong. Legal murder. America has become desensitized to the death penalty, and that is why it needs to be federally outlawed. In July 2014, murderer Joseph Wood was executed for the killing of his girlfriend and her husband and her father in 1988. He was strapped to the gurney, gasping and gulping for nearly 2 hours while being injected 15 times with lethal drugs. Even though in Arizona, where Wood lived, had explicit drug rules, new drugs and dosages were being tested on this man, crossing the line completely of cruel and unusual punishment. The death penalty is too expensive, does not deter crime, and is unconstitutional while being horribly inhumane. In multiple states, including Washington, Nevada, Kansas, Idaho, Colorado, New Jersey, and many more, death penalty trials are significantly more expensive than life sentence trials, by 8 times as much on average. A New Jersey Privacy Policy Perspective report concluded that the state's taxpayers have paid more than $250,000 in the last 20 years with no executions actually taking place. New York spent $170 million in just 9 years, also with no executions taking place. The Urban Institute Justice Policy Center studied the cost of the death penalty. They found that in Maryland, of the 162 capital cases, there were 102 cases in which the death sentence was sought but not handed down in Maryland. Those cases cost the state an additional $71 million compared to the cost of non-death penalty cases. Those costs were incurred simply to seek death penalty, where the ultimate outcome was a life or long-term prison sentence. This information is all very significant because it illustrates that the death penalty states are paying an extremely excessive amount of money to fund killing citizens of our own country. This money could be going right back into taxpayers' pockets or be spent on something more significant than legal murder. Not only are these executions extremely expensive, it is wrongly believed to deter crime. Dr. Jonathan Groner, who is an associate professor at the Ohio State University of Health and Medicine, researched the deterrent effect of the death penalty. He states, "The murder rate is most closely associated with the socioeconomic health of a country. The murder rate in the U.S. was highest during the Depression. Also, the majority of people on death row are the most blighted parts of the U.S. They are very poor and very impoverished. A very high percent have health problems. Good access to health care and improving the socioeconomic health of our country's cities would reduce the murder rate more effectively than executions." So as you can see, there is no true connection between the death penalty and deterrence. Deterrence is something that occurs when a punishment is obvious, clear, and immediate, which the death penalty, in fact, is not. Even though the death penalty does not deter crime, we know for sure it is cruel and inexorable. In Oklahoma, inmate Clayton Lockett was sentenced to death because of his kidnap, rape, and murder in 1998. On April 29, 2014, Lockett was strapped on the execution table, unwilling to be put to death. His execution was largely botched because of the extensive breaks that the executioners took in the middle of his execution. Despite stating that he was unconscious 10 minutes into the execution, Lockett writhed, groaned, convulsed, and spoke during the process. He even attempted to rise from the table 14 minutes into the procedure. There are many rumors surrounding his execution because of the secrecy the government is trying to keep about the situation. Some sources saying that the lethal drugs were injected in his groin, that he took 2 hours to die, and many other horribly wild things. But we know one thing for sure. Clayton Lockett's death was not only botched, it was unconstitutional. The 8th Amendment states that excessive bail not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. This is significant because it clearly states that we need to outlaw cruel punishments. How is murder not considered cruel? How is murder illegal while the government allows people to strap humans down on a table and ruthlessly kill them, even allowing outsiders to witness it. We need to ask ourselves these questions so we can better our country and society by outlawing inhumane executions. Now you can realize how terrible the death penalty really is. Lots of things that occur behind closed doors, even though people are allowed to witness executions, are kept secret so the public does not find out about the cruel things our government is allowing. From the money states are taking from unsuspecting people to pay for these vicious crimes, and the false assumptions that some make that believe the death penalty is a deterrence towards our country's murder rate, we all need to know and understand that the death penalty is nothing but an unconstitutional legal murder.
My opponent may say that the death penalty is inhumane, but we disagree. There are some circumstances when the death penalty would be appropriate, because according to the article, How to Kill the Death Penalty, the author states, it is much easier to be against executions when the executed is innocent, had an unfair trial, or is mentally unfit. It is much more difficult to oppose the death penalty when the executed has committed horrendous crimes and the methods of execution seem painless. This point illustrates that when we think of the death penalty as the killing of innocents and not of the killing as true murderers, we forget what those people actually did. They took others' lives, and most do it in terrible ways. These criminals were not thinking about being humane, so why should they be treated any differently? Therefore, even though my opponent may say that capital punishment is inhumane, some crimes are so terrible that the application of the death penalty would be appropriate. My opponent may also say that many executions have gone wrong, but we disagree. There are some reasons as to why the executions have gone wrong. Because one example from the article, problems with the IV line affected Oklahoma execution, the author states, the medical team could not find suitable veins in Lockett's arms, neck, legs, and feet. Lockett 38 writhed and moaned before he was declared dead 43 minutes after the first drug was administered. Most typically take 10 to 15 minutes. When it became apparent that the execution wasn't processing normally, the execution team pulled back a sheet and noticed a swelling larger than a golf ball near the injection site. This is significant because this execution went AWIRE because of an IV problem, and others have gone wrong because of problems with experimental drugs. These reasons that the executions have gone AWIRE are no different than if these problems had occurred during surgery. The only difference is that these IVs were filled with drugs to kill, opposed to drugs to save. Therefore, even though my opponent may say that too many executions have gone wrong, there are many reasons as to why it has happened.